Good morning, everyone. So today we are going to have the session on women-led climate action and looking beyond vulnerabilities. So this is the session, and I am here on behalf of my colleague Nirja, who was supposed to anchor the session, but due to a medical emergency at home, she couldn't come, and so I am speaking on her behalf. So I will apologize if I make some mistakes because suddenly it has come to me. So bear it with me here. So in this session, we will be talking about the kind of vulnerabilities women are facing due to in the event of climate change that is happening, and what kind of leaderships they are showing, and what is the context here around this climate variability. So the reality of climate variability in India is stark and immediate. We are witnessing more extreme temperature, frequent droughts, irregular monsoons, and devastating floods, as we heard the Didis from the village in the videos they were talking about this. And this manifests into deep roots and make our rural areas incredibly vulnerable in comparison to the urban areas, where rural areas are much more vulnerable and very little coping mechanism against the climate change that is happening. The data, there is a study by CW that tells that more than 1 billion people are living in the places which are extremely climate vulnerable. So this tells about the extent of this problem that our country is facing. And within this vulnerability, women face disproportionate burdens. They experience higher mortality and injury rates, and with 80% of people displaced by climate disaster being women. And in agriculture, generally we see this is a male area, but still we see that 80% of the workforce in agriculture are women, and they hardly own 30% of the land entitlements are in their name. So this is another context we have to look at the women, how the resource base of these women farmers is very different here. There is one more information that talks about that due to the extreme heat, the women mortality and maternal mortality rates, these are almost more than 10% higher when the temperature rises. These kind of challenges are particularly faced by women. And with increasing temperature and depleting water sources, women need to almost every woman who are fetching water, they have to spend 2 hours more to get just drinking water or have water at home. And these are the kind of special vulnerabilities the women are facing due to climate change. Yet, amidst these immense challenges, there are powerful narratives of resilience and leadership emerging. At TRI, our experience of working with women on these climate issues is not new, whether it involves large-scale agroforestry programs, revival of traditional agricultural practices, or water harvesting structures. Here, all these women are collectively, they are trying to build leadership and showing very innovative solutions to tackle the challenges that they are facing here. So in this session, will be trying to understand this gender-centric perspective of climate action. And for that, we have a excellent panel lined up here, talking about this kind of perspective and challenges that India is facing here. So we have a fantastic lineup of speakers and experts who will be delving into the ground realities, global opportunities, and pathway for scaling these women leadership and decentralized planning. So the overall session will be starting with a keynote address, and after that we'll have a panel discussing the issues of these climate vulnerabilities and the gender perspective here. So for the keynote address, I would like to invite Ms. Vatsala Joseph, and she is from Shakti Foundation. She is the interim CEO of Shakti Foundation, and she is Shakti Foundation is well known for its work on energy and rural development. Ms. Vatsala has more than 27 years of experience working in development sector, handling very large scale projects, and managing the work Shakti Foundation is doing. So I will invite Vatsala ma'am to have the keynote address. So Vatsala ma'am, please.
First of all, I would like to thank Transform Rural India, Anish and Anish and Anirban for inviting me to speak at this India Rural Colloquy 2025. It's truly an honor and a privilege to be speaking to such a distinguished group gathered here who believe and are committed to transforming rural India. So your unwavering dedication to strengthening grassroots voices and fostering deep, meaningful dialogue is more critical than ever, especially as we gather under the timely and inspiring theme of rural renaissance. India remains at its core a growing economy with a rural heart. While rapid urbanization and technological progress capture global attention, it is the dynamism of our villages, the livelihoods, aspirations, and resilience of their people that continue to drive the foundation of our nation's economic and social progress. Over the past decade, this understanding has translated into focused national efforts to embed rural development at the center of India's growth story. Initiatives such as universal rural electrification, now reaching over 99% of households as of 2023, and the delivery of piped water to more than 110 million rural homes under the Jal Jeevan Mission exemplify this commitment. These achievements affirm that India's path to sustainable prosperity must rise from the empowerment of its rural communities. The Indian Rural Colloquy 2025 rightly emphasizes rural renaissance, a movement from welfare dependency to vibrant engines of growth. This year's event is all about bold ideas and practical pathways that can revitalize our rural communities, making them hubs of innovation, prosperity, and human dignity. The focus is on catalyzing not only economic development, but also intergenerational mobility and the restoration of village life as a source of aspiration for all. Within this renaissance, rural women continue to stand at the forefront of both challenge and opportunity. Their resilience is constantly tested by climate adversity, such as erratic rainfall, heat waves, and resource scarcity. Data shows that women make up nearly 80% of India's rural agricultural workforce, yet still face significant barriers to land, finance, and modern technology. Despite this, across the country, women-led collectives are pioneering solutions that drive genuine and lasting change. For example, in Maharashtra, women's groups have restored over 47,000 hectares of drought-impacted farmland, lifting farm incomes by up to 30%. In Gujarat and Odisha, women-led energy initiatives are empowering rural businesses, creating new local jobs and directly reducing household drudgery. Government programs such as DAY NRLM and state-level initiatives in Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, and Andhra Pradesh are placing women at the core of climate-resilient agriculture, water management, and community enterprises. There are several rising stars that I can mention here, and every drop of change manifested can lead to rural transformation if scale is achieved. These examples highlight the diverse ways in which rural women are stepping up as leaders, tackling challenges, and driving positive change in their communities. We have Chavi Rajawat, who left her corporate career in Delhi to become a Sarpanch of Soda village in Rajasthan, focusing on infrastructure, sanitation, and healthcare. We have Aba Kumari, who improved her confidence and knowledge through the Women Leadership School initiative, enabling her to contribute more effectively to her community. S.C. Pangate led 21 tribal villages in becoming open defecation free, demonstrating the impact of dedication leadership in sanitation. Manju Devi is a farmer and an NGO field worker who trained 144 farmers in seed saving and organic farming practices, improving food security. Meera Jat, a dairy and agriculture company, Maitri Mahila Mandal, employing over 8,000 women, and introduced solar refrigerators to improve the shelf life of perishables. We have Archana Mane, a member of women-led farming group. She promoted drought-resistant agriculture, helped build water harvesting structures, and advocated for women's financial independence. Meena Ben, a first woman sarpanch of a village in Gujarat, leading to the establishment of an all-women panchayat board. So these are good examples which we have, and hopefully there will be many more like the one we saw in the video as well. At Shakti, where I work, we work on policy analysis and reforms, and we indirectly benefit the community at large, and our vertical in agriculture, forest and land use has been instrumental in facilitating several pieces of our work. To name a few, they include enabling carbon finance for smallholder farmers in India, realigning agricultural policies to encourage sustainable agriculture, developing low-carbon agriculture pathways for India, understanding sustainable finance requirements for India's agricultural sector, charting sustainable pathways for the Indian dairy sector, addressing energy, environment, and livelihood linkages for India's energy and food systems, promoting PM Pranam scheme by encouraging sustainable fertilizer practices through behavior change communication interventions, developing a natural resource utilization plan for biodiversity hotspots, funding gap assessment to unlock investments for nature-based solutions in cities, sustainable agriculture value chain emissions, circularity for water-stressed towns, and developing systems map to mainstream bioregional approach. These are a few of the many of the projects that we have undertaken. We have done approximately 1,000 plus projects in the last 13 years of existence. While policy progress is real, this transformation is only a beginning. We see the strongest results where governments and communities work hand in hand, designing interventions around the lived realities and leadership of rural women. The challenge ahead is to make climate finance, technology, and markets accessible to every woman-led initiative, ensuring that no one is left at the margins. As we come together for the Indian Rural Colloquy 2025, let us ensure that this rural renaissance is defined by genuine inclusion, bold leadership, and actionable commitments. Our vision must be clear. India's villages can and must be engines of sustainable growth and human fulfillment. That journey begins with recognizing and investing in the potential of rural women who will shape this century's rural renaissance. I wish to congratulate the entire TRI team and wish them the very best for their future endeavors, and look forward to seeing how their efforts will continue to inspire and catalyze meaningful change across rural India. Thank you.
Thank you, Vatsala ma'am, for this keynote address. You highlighted the individual ladies who are doing wonderful work. So now this is time to have our esteemed panel on the dais, and let us deep dive into their experiences and their insights. So first, I would like to invite Mr. Shraman Jhaji. Shraman is the CEO of Hindustan Unilever Foundation, and we all know Hindustan Unilever what is, and the HUF Foundation, they are doing great work with water and women. This is the around the theme they are investing, and they are doing a lot of work and supporting many organizations to do the development work. And he's building an impactful and partnership across sectors. His work focuses on resource governance, data-driven impact, and aligning business with national and global sustainability. At Hindustan Unilever Foundation, the CSR arm of one of the India's most respected companies. Mr. Jha has been instrumental in forging high-impact collaborations between communities, civil societies, organizations, and local governments. His leadership is marked by strategic blend of developmental insights, corporate responsibility, and data-driven impacts. So, Shraman sir, please take the dais. And thank you for being with us. Second, I would like to invite Mr. Samir from Rainmatter Foundation. And I think we all know Rainmatter Foundation and Samir, who is kind of championing the circularity and building enabling network of different actors and organizations to bring circularity and climate resilience in the local areas. Thank you, Samir, for being with us. Third, I would like to invite Santosh Singh, who is a partner and CEO of Intellicap. And he has extensive experience around this climate action and carbon finances and implementing, supporting many organizations and projects across many countries in India, Africa, and other places. So welcome, Santosh, here. And thank you for being with us. So we may start kind of a small introduction first. So, and about a small keynote speech, something you want to share with our colleagues and the audiences who are here. So some opening remarks you want to give about what do you think about climate resilience and the gender perspective that we are trying to bring in here. So what are your perspectives and some opening remarks you want to make before we delve deep into with some question and panel discussions here. So anyway, Shraman sir, please.
Thank you so much. I'll go first. When the 6th report of the IPCC thing had come out, and that was now almost 4 to 5 years ago, and that is when we were introduced to words like extreme events and compound events, it made sense, but I don't think we were all able to really visualize what it meant. Yesterday, I'm sure all of us would have seen on our phones or on TV the Uttarakhand flash flood, cloud burst, whether it's a glacial lake thing, GLOF as they say. We still don't know all the answers, but to see how in a matter of seconds an entire village was obliterated. So I guess what might have seemed a construct or a thing, now as we see more evidence of it, it's in our face that these are things which are happening all the time. And since our specific work is in the area of water security, I'm often at pains to share with people that water security does not mean the same as water scarcity. Too much of water is also a problem. It has to be the right time, right place, right quality, and so many other parameters. So that's the one part which I just want to put as an opening thought. And the other which I would not have understood at all, unlike most of you, I'm a relative newcomer to the broader development sector. So it's been a very steep learning and experience curve for me. And now I'm almost embarrassed or ashamed to say that how many things I was completely blind to in my earlier avatars. And the most striking of which is the disproportionate impact on women in facing these various sets of hardships, which in some way or the other are all linked to the issues around climate. It's a very wide perspective, and just as a point of illustration, how many of us would not have admired beautiful paintings or beautiful photographs of women with various ghadas on their heads and walking across? It makes for a very pretty picture or a pretty painting. But the fact that we've never seen a man doing a similar thing, or nor have we tried to lift the matka to realize how difficult it is even to place it on your head, let alone walk for miles. It just tells you how blind we have been to some of these things which have always been there. There are many other things I guess we will get to touch in, but just think that every time there's a major natural disaster, and most of the men folk with migration are already in the cities, what will happen to the women? The links with trafficking, etc., which is never by choice, it's always out of compulsion and to survive. It's not difficult to kind of draw the lines there. Ashokji, that would be my thought.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So, Samir, you want to have your opinion?
Yeah. So thanks for having me here, and I think this is at the heart of what we do at the foundation itself. And I think in many ways, so our understanding of gender has been evolving. I would say it's still evolving how it plays in our thesis, in our work, in how we imagine these solutions playing out. At this point, I would say, while the women are at the forefront of the impact of what climate is bringing to them, I think more importantly, they are the core building blocks in terms of our pathways out of it. Because in many ways, I mean, the climate problem is a byproduct of poor custodianship of our places, right? And for centuries now, for maybe longer than that, for millennia, we've had a very male-dominated custodianship of our planet, of our places, of our villages, of our cities. It has led to, so to counterbalance that, you will also not see women being lumberjacks, bringing logs down the river, right? So the men were doing all the destruction in many senses of the word. We were involved in all of the monetization on the destruction and extraction on the planet. So I think that custodianship of places beyond, there are any place has four large parts to it. There's the human services and benefits realm, which we bucket under HCI. There's the economic and market realm. Then there's the ecological realm that we've all ignored forever. And then there are stories. 3 out of these 4 are almost naturally better owned by women, right? But one of them has dominated for generations now, for millennia almost. I think now we are getting enough signs. You described an event from yesterday, but we are seeing events almost every day. I mean, China has been seeing crazy scales of disaster over the last 1 month. Europe is facing that every year. There are heat waves, wildfires, whatever. I think we are getting enough signs that we can't ignore the other realms too long. And we can't keep assuming that we can keep borrowing from ecology. Our stories have moved too far away from trying to understand our places as places and not as resource bases or things to exploit. That's the each of when we call it a place or a village or what Anish was talking about in terms of rural or urban, these are lenses that we bring in. The place is a much more complex system, right? And we've brought in very, very narrow lenses over time. We look at it from just an economic lens or just a production lens or just a political lens or whatever. So somebody sees oppression, somebody sees opportunity, somebody sees backwardness, forwardness. But it's a much more complex thing that's been playing out for millennia, even before humans were around, right? And I think we're getting a very harsh reminder that we really need to start looking at it as that complex, that beautiful complexity that it represents, even before we showed up. And I think in many, many ways, women are able to care about multiple of these realms. They are better holders of the stories and they pass it on in a certain way. They're able to care about a wider variety and wider spectrum of actors, issues, and whatever than men. So I think they are a very strong fundamental building block for the change that we need as a planet, not just in India, not just for rural. I think that's where we are coming at this from.
Thank you, Samir, for bringing the insight on custodianship, the custodianship that is happening and how women are championing, with a different perspective. So now over to Santosh, please.
Thank you, Ashokji, and congratulations on the 5th edition of Rural Colloquy. And I think I'll build on what Samir just highlighted. When we talk about climate, the discourse is more about mitigation. And I would kind of completely stay away from mitigation and I'll talk about the adaptation. That's where I think the major challenge lies. And I'll give you a couple of anecdotes to set the point. I think 16, 17 years back, I spent almost a year going to the villages and learning about how women live, how they cook, how they kind of use the natural resources. And many of you who have gone through the development education, you know something called participatory rural appraisal or rural resource mapping. And it's very obvious if you ask women to map the village resources and ask men to map the village resources, what they highlight is very, very a clear indication of what they value. The water sources are much more vivid. The wood from the kind of fuel wood that they get is very vivid. The play spaces, all of these are very vivid in women's mind. The point I'm trying to make is that if we have to achieve our adaptation goal, women are the natural building blocks, as Samir pointed out, and there are 3-4 reasons for that. One is that adaptation is a long-term phenomena. You cannot solve something that has been degraded, deteriorated over, say, 30, 40, 50 years in 4 or 5 year horizon. So you have to take a long-term view. The second dimension is that adaptation is very place-centric, very local context-centric. It requires understanding of the local rituals, resources, knowledge, and the strategy have to originate from those places. And women are the natural custodian of many of these inherent knowledge, the practices, the kind of ownership. So they have the knowledge, they have the kind of understanding to contribute to that action. But systemic challenges, and I want you to kind of rejig your mind. If you're driving in, say, UP, Bihar, or some of the Haryana places, if you see a board where say that Fala village Sarpanch welcomes you, and Sarpanch would be a lady, and then there would be wife of XYG. It's a very unique. You see that? Sarpanch welcomes you, but the photo would be of husband that says. So the notional participation of women, which is, again, I'll give you some numbers. In almost all the climate committee that you talk about, only 23% women participate. And when the 23% women participate, participation is notional, the same like the poster that I'm mentioning. So they are not inherently contributing to the discourse about how they can take ownership, how they can contribute. Because we have made the climate action so technical, so elite-centric, so a kind of jargon-led, that it's very difficult to communicate and kind of give the context. I'm associated with a project where we are trying to rewild a hillock in UP. And it took us 3 years to convince the women that why they need to work on that. But once they are convinced, they are guiding us how it should be done. So the women role is kind of also to bring their knowledge and make the participation. Anis in the morning was talking about the poverty and some of the numbers that we have achieved, the progress that we have made. I think India has some of the very inherent strength that we can leverage for climate action by women. We have around 100 million women part of SHG group, but that SHG movement is more from the focus of economic prosperity, not from protecting and resilience building or climate action. So that's a very big opportunity that we can leverage. But even there, if you look at climate resilience, financial resources play a very critical part. Financial prosperity gives you more. If you are going through extreme heat, if you have money, you can buy AC. So financial resources can give you a better way of coping with that. But the challenge lies that only 36 to 38% women have formal banking accounts. And out of those, only around 20% have access to formal agricultural credit. So in the financial sector, they don't have that inclusion that we are talking about. And this situation is even worse if you look at the climate finance. I'm using the word climate finance, which means that something in the climate action. Only 3% climate finance has any gender dimension. 3%. Think of that. And this 3% is a very, very small number, considering that majority of climate finance is about mitigation, a portion of adaptation, and within that, gender is a very, very limited part. UNFCCC has put a lot of focus on women's education, their participation in climate action. And I want to give you some examples that why it is critical to have the Viksit Bharat. There was a study done by researchers Many of you know that we have got LPG, but still 40 to 50% of women cook on the traditional chulhas because the LPG is very kind of a ceremonial once in a day, but most of the cooking happens on that. The air pollution that the woman lives has 3-generation impact. So if you do an IQ test of youth coming from the villages, it has been proven by science that the indoor air pollution has contributed to almost 20 to 30 basis point lower IQ because of that exposure, and it takes 3 generations of wealth to negate that. So just want to highlight that the woman role is kind of so inherent in our strategy, and that need to be addressed A, at a strategic level, B, at a planning level, and C, at the execution level. So far, we have been very, very clear about having the execution level support, but we have not thought through how to increase the strategic insight and the planning. So I'll pause here and we'll discuss later.
Thank you, Santosh, for the opening remark. And I think it has set the tone what we are going to talk about. It is not about only vulnerabilities, but what kind of resilience and what kind of opportunities women can bring, and what is the perspective around that. And you also talked about the notional participation here. But when we reach out, are there platforms where this notionality can be challenged? Are the places exclusive for the women here? So places like women-led SHGs or the CLFs or the village organizations. So these are the exclusive places of women where they are meeting, interacting and transacting every week and week after week for many, many years. So slowly we are seeing these institutions are emerging as very robust places. So from that perspective, I will come back to Shraman sir and his perspective around these women collectives and how they are participating and showing leadership around the systems they have. It is called VPRP. We all know that now. Earlier it was Village Poverty Reduction Plan. Now it is renamed or it is converted into Village Prosperity and Resilience Plans. And how these plans are going to Gram Panchayat development programs like GPDP. And for that, what kind of capacity building and what kind of interventions are happening? And I would like to have Shraman sir's perspective around that.
And thank you, Ashokji. In fact, when you were narrating, that welcome to XYZ Panchayat and the name of a lady and wife of so and so, the word that goes around and all of you must be familiar with is Sarpanch Pati. Sarpanch Pati. So the lady is in front, but the Sarpanch Pati, and therefore you expected कि discussion भी होगा तो the Sarpanch Pati would be doing it. So that is as much of a figurehead. But having said that, the fact that we have even got that far is, think of it that 20 years ago that would have been unimaginable. So so while it's very easy to say that we still have many miles to go, and a lot of it has been, if what has been accomplished is only in theory and not in reality, at least there is recognition and there is therefore some degree of movement. It's a large and a complex country, and as very rightly pointed out, there are very many local parameters everywhere which need to be factored in apart from the one big idea. So Ashokji, to your point that as women come into this, the moment they have a say, because they are the ones who are actually closest to the village issues than any of the men. And this, I really stress this point because across large parts of India, including southern India, which I thought was an exception, the issue of migration is so high that you rarely find able-bodied men in the villages. So it's either the aged or they are the women are effectively, they are the residents of the village. They are the ones who are actually facing life there day in, day out, and therefore closest to that. Any form of support that we as a broader civil society or system can help to capacitate these women to play a more active role is perhaps the single strongest thing that we can do. I think the legal provisions are now more or less in place. The statutory provisions are more and that in place. We have to just give the support to kind of give them the confidence, give them the relevant, help them, support them to build the relevant capacities that they take on the responsibilities that have been put to them. In much of the work that the Hindustan Unilever Foundation supports, I think all of them with one notable example, everything is finally built around women folk and the women communities. So that's one way that that we can see this change happening, but it has to be done relentlessly, and also with the belief that since they are closest to the village and the issues around it, their day-to-day life is getting impacted far much more to the maximum. They will also have the best solutions once they're actively able to fulfill these roles.
Thank you, sir. So I think you set the context for Vikas, that when whose heart is around circularity and building enabling network, and how these village communities can be strengthened so that there are more leadership around climate action emerge from the villages. So I would like to have your perspective and some messages for us here, Vikas.
So, in terms of see, we again our primary lens for climate action is place. And in fact, we've had very difficult debates inside around adaptation, mitigation, resilience, all of these English words we throw at the problem, because when you see this through lived experience, they dissolve. You know, what is adaptation today starts looking like mitigation tomorrow, and you know, it's sometimes resilience in the short term, sometimes, you know, so these are very difficult. Finally, the action is on the ground. It is happening through decisions you are making on a daily basis in your place. The people who are living there, earning there, managing their water resources, managing their livestock, schooling, education, health, etc., are making these decisions on a running basis, and they're making trade-offs across these different aspects continuously. Do they understand what trade-offs they are making? Are they making them individually or collectively? Who does this collective include? Which is where, so for us, the question around gender is not ideological, it's logical. You know, because this ownership is very strongly, like you were saying, like they're natural custodians of the place, right? And they're also practical custodians of the place, because in many cases the men have left, right? So both because of lack of choice and because of instinct, they are ideally a very important cohort of true good ownership of the place. Now, what do we bring in terms of whether it's data and knowledge, or, you know, the village has also broken down in many contexts. So we have to recognize that fact. Very often the village is now a bunch of individuals living in the same place, right? The collectivization has broken down. The what existed as a village had an identity as a collective 300 years ago because of various actions of market, state, you know, various actors and acting in various ways, has become very individual entities, right? So they don't necessarily, I think 4G has a huge role to play in this as well in many parts. Very often people don't sit together and talk about the village anymore. They don't consider this. So obviously you are inadvertently making trade-offs from the I space and loading it against the V space. The village is the V space, right? The collective is the V space. So how do you get these habits back into action where it's broken? Where they already are, how do you bring in certain perspectives? Can you enable knowledge? Like microplastics were not something we were considering traditionally. So we have to bring in the understanding and science for it. That's necessary. There are traditions to understand your biodiversity and ecology. How do you actually enable that conversation and you know, acknowledge it and bring it to the fore, whether it's in policy or our own actions. Essentially, if this starts to happen, people will start to understand the trade-offs that they are making and start to imagine the pathways, the gaps they have at their end. What are the pathways to actually address those gaps? So one thing we've started saying very loudly is that the idea of the project or the program needs to be designed and defined in that collective. Not in our rooms, not in these rooms. So we can really create a response architecture. We actually have even shied away from using the word intervention altogether. Because an intervention is, it's my design, it's my program, it's my project. But really it belongs to the people who are considering their own future, who are looking at their own understanding of what these trade-offs are, what gaps exist. If there's no gap, it's fine. We were at a village, at a forest ridge village in Odisha, who had a month-long party, basically. Like they have a festival that goes on for a month. They brew 7 different kinds of beers. I think that's a great life to live, right? Yeah. So it's their choice. It's their understanding of their situation and what they want to do next. And all we can do as people who are going in to help is help with better understanding, help acknowledge and restart this process first of all, help with better understanding, and then bring in the resources, the tools that enable these better trade-offs. Right? So are we assembling an infrastructure for this help? And this applies to all ownership. It happens to be that a lot of this ownership will lie with the women. A lot of this strong ownership will lie with the women. But it really needs to be available to everybody who has a sense of ownership around this in their place. So when we look at circularity and, again, a lot of English words thrown at the problem. When looked at it from the experience of the lived realities of people, all this happens by default. If your trade-off is coming from a dependence on materials or ideas or technology that's coming from somewhere else, it's less likely to be true. If your livelihood systems have shrunk to just 5 livelihoods, you are going to be more fragile. If you have the opportunity, we've come across panchayats of 1,500 households which spend 1.2 crores buying biscuits every year. Now, it's a number that they contend. Do they want to do something about it? Do they see the health problem from it, the economic problem from it? There is a climate problem from it that they don't have to worry about, but it happens as an outcome. So if they do it for their reasons, climate will get solved. Is it mitigation? Is it adaptation? Is it resilience? We can keep debating all day. But if they start to move towards solving it, are we providing answers over there? Right. So that's how we are really looking at the problem. We don't necessarily bring the ideas of circularity or adaptation or resilience front and center. Those are byproducts that will happen if we do this process right, really speaking.
Thank you, Samir, for this new perspective of trade-offs and how villagers can come together, do the planning and understand it better. So now we'll come to Santosh. And I know, Santosh, adaptation is very close to your heart and your efforts. So can you help us to understand more about the systemic barriers that women face while putting their efforts and leadership around this climate change adaptation? So what are the systemic barriers particularly women face, and what is your perspective around that?
I think Samir just pointed out these words that we use, adaptation. I think I can challenge how many of you know the adaptation in Hindi. Figure it out. Anybody has an idea about what adaptation is called in Hindi? How will you talk about that? It's called anukulan. It's called anukulan, and mitigation is saman. Figure it out. It's much easier to understand adaptation. So I think the systemic barrier A, as Samir was pointing it out, is how to communicate with them the criticality of things going around them, how to make them aware. And I think the climate education, and I'm using this word as it is kind of mainstreamed, has become too much about the jobs, the larger picture. It's part of now our civic education. The way resources need to be consumed, protected, to be used, and the way the worlds are changing around, we need to redefine our civic education. And the way you put it, the climate education, it becomes a very, very elite thing, but civic education should be incorporating the thing. So one of the key barriers is that how we can make this understanding happen. And to make this understanding happen, you have to acknowledge their critical ownership, their role in that, and a long-term relationship with them. You cannot go and say, okay, I'm here to do this. You have to build the trust. They need to trust you that you are here for their own benefit, for you are a partner in their kind of life. You cannot be somebody, just go there, be there and tell something and happen. It doesn't happen. And that's the reason why water recharging efforts have been very limited success globally, because it's take long term and it's a very different thing. So that's one barrier. The second barrier I see is that having, as you can see, that the women participation in a strategic discussion. It's a very desirable goal, but we are four men talking about that, not because, for any bad reason, but because we do not have many women leaders. And the reason is not that there are no women leaders, their visibility is limited. I was running a program called GROW, which is entirely to just showcase the women leaders who are not seen in the traditional world as a leader, but they have a lot to contribute, make them visible. Now, how we can make them visible, how we can get them on a table and discuss that they can contribute to that. So that's the second part. Give them ownership, enable them to contribute to that discourse. Third is the challenge that we have is of capabilities and resources. They have capabilities and resources, but they don't control it. Even the women's participation in many discourses is controlled by men. Even if they have the resources and capabilities, I was kind of designing a program way back where we wanted to have a fund that is entirely meant for women, founders or women leaders. And initially, we did not design it properly. Obviously, we learned. Most of the application that came, there were a notional co-woman founder. Suddenly, I saw the increase in the number of women co-founder coming for that, right? Because they start saying that, okay, there's an easier way to get that. So we have to reshape this whole thing. Now, globally, and I'll just put some global context, it's not that it has not been done. Look at Rwanda and Costa Rica. Entire reforestation, afforestation work is led by women. And they have been far more effective in restoring the forest than any other initiative. It's a very proven, because they own that thing culturally. Can we do that here? As Samir was talking about, that the lumberjacks are the men, but women are more concerned about the living tree rather than the cut tree. So that's a third thing. The other dimension that I want to say that is kind of, we have to get away that climate is a new phenomena. You have to see this ingrained into whatever we do. I work on a climate, that's how it is labeled. But I work on building, I work on transportation, I work on water system, I work on food, I want work on. So you don't have to be a climate champion. You have to champion the climate in whatever you are doing. The work that you are doing, if you're a banker, think of the climate dimension you are financing. People talk about, I advise a number of firms saying that what climate finance is. I'm more worried about non-climate finance. Just to give you a number, everybody talks about how many trillions we require every year for climate? 3 to 6 trillion by different estimates every year, right? The global economy is more than 450 trillion. It's not even. So you understand that while we are focusing on this 3 to 6 trillion, we are not talking about that 450 trillion going and destroying the climate. So I'm saying that rather than focusing on climate as a new topic, you have to integrate whatever we are doing with the climate lens and the gender lens. So that's the another kind of systemic barrier. The last part is that there is a lot of discussion about many interventions. For example, carbon market is, I saw a lady talking about how she is getting carbon finance. These initiatives are good, and Shakti Foundation gave us some support to do something. And I'll tell you how it is critical to design these initiatives with right heart. We made a place that we will make 80 to whatever maximum the carbon money should go to the community. And we got a very big pushback saying that why you are destroying the market. They are not aware, let them be happy with $1. Why you are promising $6, $7, $8, $10, right? So when we design the intervention, we should be making this information asymmetry go away, because then their participation becomes key. So most of the interactions we are talking about, be the banking system, be the village level system, there is a lot of information asymmetry. This what you call lack of awareness. It's not a lack of awareness. It's the systemic result of information asymmetry that women are not aware. So ownership, long-term planning, don't think climate as a layer, but think whatever you do as a system, and get women to contribute, because they have the capability, they have the resources, but they do not have the enabling conditions, which is we need to just lift the kind of barriers on that. We don't need to build their capacity, we just need to lift the barrier.
I'll just make one more point. So I think, say if we study the world for the last few millennia, all the hierarchies have been male-dominated, right? Women act very well in place, and that's where the custodianship lies, and that's what we are hearing from the planet right now, that you really need to get back to that and sort that. Because in the hierarchies, we have actually messed it up. So, I mean, even calling this panel leadership is problematic, to be honest. The problematic has to lie in place. We really have to believe this. What we can create, this entire room can create, is infrastructure that is responsive to that leadership in place. So if we imagine, fundamentally imagine that the idea of the program, the project, the scheme, the whatever you want to call it, right, the intervention, is getting designed there. And we are responding to their urge to design it a certain way. You can still have a debate, you can still bring information, you can do all of that, right? Then the idea of leadership flips. You have contextual leaders, contextual in place, contextual to a particular problem, and you have hundreds of thousands of leaders in the country. You don't have 3 or 4 people on a panel like this represent leadership. That's a very poor idea of leadership, honestly. I mean, the whole idea of democracy was to create leaders in context. Right? Then we have gone back, we have snapped back to our hierarchies. And that's terrible, actually. The second thing is, I think, and this is where I have hope. I'm not a very hopeful person overall. Yeah. When I see young people, and this is deep in tribal Odisha, this is in Bangalore schools, everywhere. Young people look at gender very, very differently. Anybody who's, I don't know, below 27, 26 today is fundamentally looking at gender relationships very, very differently. It's probably because of the same 4G that we spoke about earlier. But I see hope there. I think some of us older people just have to get out and let them sort it out. They really need, and a lot of the older organizations don't really know how to speak to youth, how to operate in those spaces. So just like women, and we've actually seen women and youth interact. If you look at them as 2 cohorts, interact very, very well and call each other in. So it's interesting that the SHGs are not just women SHGs anymore. They are women, and they include young people in many places, even the guys. So I think some of these dynamics are interesting to build upon and offer some hope. Yeah.
I think this is a very new perspective we are listening to. और मैं संतोष जी से रिलेट कर रहा था फार्मर एजुकेशन को लेकर के, जब वो कार्बन क्रेडिट का काम चल रहा है एकॉन के साथ में, तो नाउ विलेजर्स आर ऑल्सो एबल टू रिलेट. जैसे यहाँ दीदी ने बताया उस वीडियो में कि कार्बन क्रेडिट का मतलब क्या है, तो कि आप लोग शहर में धुआं उड़ाते हो, हम पेड़ लगाते हैं, पेड़ धुआं को पकड़ता है, तो मुझे पैसे मिलने चाहिए उसके लिए, क्योंकि हमने अपनी ज़मीन लगाई है, हमने अपना मेहनत लगाया है. तो आई कैन रिलेट वेरी वेल कैसे लोग, अगर उनको अपॉर्चुनिटी दिया जाए, पार्टिसिपेशन का मौका दिया जाए, तो उनकी समझ बनती है. और साथ में उस तरह के पार्टनर्स चाहिए जो इनको इक्विटेबली पास कर सकें, कि एकॉन के साथ जो कार्बन क्रेडिट का प्रोग्राम है, 80% मनी इज़ गोइंग टू द फार्मर्स डायरेक्टली. सो दिस ब्रिंग्स आई थिंक अ वेरी डिफरेंट पर्सपेक्टिव. और जो कम्युनिटी का एजुकेशन है, महिलाओं का एजुकेशन है, और उनके लिए मौका कैसे क्रिएट कर सकते हैं कि कार्बन क्रेडिट जैसा डिफिकल्ट सब्जेक्ट दे कैन अंडरस्टैंड एंड दे कैन रिलेट विथ. तो I think this was very well said, Santosh, and I can relate what is happening on the ground and the perspective you are bringing. तो इसके बाद अगेन मैं श्रवण सर के पास आऊँगा थोड़ा और डिटेल में समझने के लिए कि ये जो महिलाओं को अगर पार्टिसिपेट कराना है, उनका लीडरशिप के लिए और अपॉर्चुनिटी क्रिएट करनी है, तो किस तरह का इनेबलिंग इन्वायरमेंट को फोस्टर कर सकते हैं एक। और मेनी टाइम्स ये जो डेवलपमेंट वर्ल्ड है, हम प्रोजेक्ट टू प्रोजेक्ट करते हैं कि 3 साल का प्रोजेक्ट है, वंस द ऑब्जेक्टिव्स आर मेट देन देयर इज अनदर प्रोजेक्ट, देन अनदर प्रोजेक्ट। सो लेकिन कैपेसिटी बिल्ड, लोग तो वही हैं, समीर जैसा बोल रहे हैं, वो प्लेस है और प्लेस भी है, लोग भी वहाँ पर हैं और एक चैलेंज है। तो ये जो ओवरऑल इन चीज़ों को स्ट्रेंथन करने के लिए और किस तरह के इंटरवेंशंस की ज़रूरत है और क्या किया जा सकता है, इसके अराउंड में
नहीं, ये गंभीर चक्रव्यूह है और इस चक्रव्यूह को, कोई भी चक्रव्यूह को तोड़ना आसान नहीं होता है। चक्रव्यूह घुसना तो आसान हो जाता है, अब वेन्यू भी करके निकलना मुश्किल है। तो हम लोग जब इस पर विचार विमर्श करते हैं तो किसी भी प्रोग्राम के संदर्भ में हमारा विचार यह रहता है कि एग्जिट प्लान क्या होना चाहिए। कि एक तो वह प्रोग्राम खत्म हुआ, आपने हैंड और बिकॉज CSR फंडिंग ये सब का जो भी है रेगुलेशंस है, तो आपने बेटन किसी और ने बेटन पकड़ा, कुछ और वो दूर दौड़े, वो रिले रेस की बात हो जाती है, वो एक सोल्यूशन हुआ। पर दूसरा, अगर हम 3 साढ़े 3 साल बहुत तो नहीं है बट उतना भी कम नहीं है, कि अगर हम मान के चलिए जैसे जो बच्चे को साइकिल सिखाते हैं और तीसरा जो छोटा चक्का साइड में फिट रहता है, कि जब तक एक बार बैलेंस आ जाए फिर वो चक्का खोल दीजिए, खुद ब खुद निकल जाएगा। तो बहुत प्रोग्राम का समस्या आता है कि उसको एट द एंड ऑफ इट अगर इकोनॉमिक बेनिफिट है, अगर प्रॉस्पेरिटी आता है उससे, तो वो खुद पे खुद वो परपेचुएट हो जाएगा, वो स्टिक कर जाएगा, क्योंकि सबको एक बेटर ऑफ है, सबके एवरीवन लाइक्स मोर मनी, इकोनॉमिकली और बेटर ऑफ, द प्रोग्राम विल सस्टेन। और जब तक उसको वो सिर्फ फंडिंग पर चलेगा, इट विल ऑलवेज बी लिटिल बिट ऑफ, जैसे हॉस्पिटल में होता है ना, वो कभी आर्टिफिशियल ऑक्सीजन दे करके ये करके आप रख रहे हैं, बट अगर फाइनली द बॉडी हैज टू बिकम स्ट्रांग इनफ टू बी एबल टू सर्वाइव। तो हमारे इस पर काफी विचार रहता है कि कोई भी अगर प्रोग्राम खत्म हो तब तक उसको कैन वी मेक इट give enough evidence that it is economically a better idea for the community itself to take it up, ताकि वो फिर उसको कंटिन्यू करते रहें। बट कोई इससे कोई हमारे पास कोई रामबाण नहीं है, कोई मैजिक सॉल्यूशन नहीं है, जादू की छड़ी नहीं है। बट आई एम वेरी हैप्पी टू लर्न इफ एनीवन हैज गुड एक्सपीरियंसेस। कुछ जगह में हमारा अच्छा सक्सेस रहा है, where people have at the end of it, women in particular, they have become माइक्रो एंटरप्रेन्योर्स, और वो जैसे जो एडवाइजरी में भी जो काम करती है या कुछ कर, सो द पीपल आर विलिंग टू पे फॉर दैट एडवाइस। ये बहुत बड़ी बात है, अगर किसान वो एडवाइस के लिए अगर पे करने के लिए तैयार है, तो दैट मींस हर स्टेचर दे सी वैल्यू इन दैट द ट्रेन्ड वुमेन्स एडवाइस। तो हमारे हिसाब से दोस्त बिकम ज्यादा ड्यूरेबल टाइप ऑफ सोल्यूशन निकल के आते हैं इसमें से।
Now I will come to Samir to learn a little more about. You keep talking about the networks, multi-actor collaborations and partnerships, and how. So, if you can help us understand more about what kind of these partnerships and how they are helping for the people and place to flourish together, and what can be done around that, or some experiences or some evidences that you can share with us, Samir.
So just taking off the idea that Shravan sir was actually talking about, कि किसी भी जगह पे आप and actually इसमें I'll also digress a little, and the point you made कि long term relationship नहीं है, तो I think इसमें role को समझना बहुत ज़रूरी है। There are short term actors, there are enablers, there are long term actors. Long term actors हम लोग नहीं हैं। Long term actors जगह है, जगह पे जो है long term है। In fact, the women are slightly more long-term actors than the men, right? In rebuilding places. तो ये रोल समझना बहुत ज़रूरी है। और आज मेरे ख्याल से पूरे जो जितना भी ये जो चेंज एक्शन है, इसमें रोल क्लैरिटी थोड़ी सी गड़बड़ हो गई है। We walk into places assuming that we are primary actors, but we forget to work with the primary actors in the place. We forget to listen to them. We forget to, वो थोड़ा एंड में चेक बॉक्स हो जाता है कि हाँ कम्युनिटी का अप्रूवल हो गया या कंसल्टेशन हो गया, बट हम ये भूल जाते हैं कि जगह उनकी है, वो प्राइमरी एक्टर्स हैं और हम बाकी सब एनेबलर्स हैं. So as you get this role clarity, any good ecosystem is made of different actors playing different roles. You know, यहाँ पे जिन्होंने लाइट का काम किया, जिन्होंने बिल्डिंग बनाई, जो यहाँ ऑपरेशंस कर रहे हैं, जो यहाँ एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर, जो सब, एवरीबडी इज प्लेइंग अ रोल. उसके चलते ये इवेंट हो पा रहा है बिकॉज एवरीबडी नोज व्हाट देयर रोल इज एंड ऑल्सो नोज व्हाट देयर रोल इज नॉट. जो सेकेंड पार्ट है, आई थिंक ये पूरे चेंज एक्शन स्पेस में थोड़ा वीक है बिकॉज we end up trying being everything to everybody. You know, we actually, sometimes it's a little problematic when you walk into places and you hear the vocabulary of ye Fala ka gaon hai. Fala being some organization, which is extremely problematic. Right? वो उनका गाँव नहीं है. Right? ये किसी फंडर का गाँव तो मतलब funders have to be really, really on the outside. They have to be invisible. Because we are providing resource base to create infrastructure for owners to act. You know, we are 3 levels removed from everything. We really have to back off. हमारे ऑफिसेस में बैठ के हम अगर डिसाइड करें कि उड़ीसा में अभी रिसेंटली गए थे 5 गांव में, विद इन 100 किलोमीटर्स ऑफ ईच अदर. 5 में किसी की भी स्टोरी सेम नहीं थी. आप कोई भी एक आइडिया लेके 5 गांव में अप्लाई करेंगे, आप एग्रो इकोलॉजी में कीजिए, पानी पे कीजिए, लाइवलीहुड्स पे कीजिए, किसी में भी, वो 4 में फेल होगा. वो 5 की स्टोरी इतनी अलग थी, मतलब विद इन 100 किलोमीटर्स कॉन्टेक्स्ट सेम नहीं था. सेम ट्राइब्स, दे दीज 5 villages had 2 different tribes that we interacted with. सेम ट्राइब्स, सेम लैंडस्केप, सेम एवरीथिंग. 5 अलग अलग कॉन्टेक्स्ट है. अब आप बना लीजिए बैंगलोर में बैठ के प्रोग्राम, राइट? 5 में 4 जगह वो फेल कर जाएगा because the lived reality is very, very different. So the idea of creating or imagining multi-actor platforms of ecosystems is of creating infrastructure that people can actually pick from. अगर आपकी medical report थोड़ी सी गड़बड़ आई, some of us will start doing yoga in the morning, pick juicing, go to organic food. Some of us will start cycling, some will start going to the gym, some will start supplements. All of us pick from the same set of options and pick different health journeys. Why do we imagine that a village or a set of actors in a village want to pick exactly the same journey for exactly the same set of problems across a large landscape? That is a very poor imagination, and that's why scale doesn't happen, because we try to impose कि, you know, झारखंड में ये 6 प्रॉब्लम है, बट झारखंड में कभी 6 प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. किसी गांव में 16 है, किसी गांव में 3 है. एक रीजन में जहाँ पे रैम्पेंट माइग्रेशन है, एक गांव ने खड़े होकर बोला कि हमारे माइग्रेशन की प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. तो हम क्यों वहाँ ज़बरदस्ती पहुँच रहे हैं माइग्रेशन की प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व करने को? इन 5 गांव में पानी की बहुत सारी प्रॉब्लम थी. एक गांव का क्वेश्चन था कि हमारी 3rd क्रॉप के लिए हम पानी कैसे मैनेज करें. हमने कहा यार ये तो थर्ड वर्ल्ड में फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड प्रॉब्लम है, राइट? बिकॉज उनके पास 2 पेरेनियल रिवर सोर्सेज हैं. हर किसी का कॉन्टेक्स्ट अलग है. So on what basis do you design programs sitting outside? You can design infrastructure that is responsive. And that's where the role of people bringing in a set of things for a particular region, because एक region में a certain kind of infrastructure will be needed. Bringing in data, bringing in technologies, ideas, traditional knowledge, वगैरह वगैरह, can be assembled as infrastructure available to every change maker in the region. अब वो change maker यूथ क्लब हो, SHG हो, पॉलिटिकल हो, रिलीजियस हो, उससे फ़र्क नहीं पड़ता. As long as they are working for their place, in their place, we are in a good place. And I think for us, all of us layers to understand our roles in that. Today there's a little bit of a cartelization almost between people who have solutions and people who have money. And we sit and design very grand schemes and push it in. And now this happens in government, this happens in philanthropy, this happens in think tanks, research organizations, data organizations, all of that. जहाँ पे भी decision making capability है. Because वो एक छोटा सा शॉर्टकट है ना कि यार एक प्रोग्राम लेके जाओ, वो हो ही जाएगा, उसके जो भी 2-3 वेरिएबल हैं आउटकम पे कुछ दिख ही जाएगा. To wait for change to happen ground up It's like a hockey stick. Initially, it's a little slow, but then it takes off really well. And we have to have that patience. Because that pain is lasting, that pain is felt on the ground, and the change that happens from that is also lasting. So if we allow for that to happen, we have to assemble. If we have to allow for that to happen, we have to assemble as infrastructure. So it's in that direction that we are thinking of these multi-actor platforms and so on and so forth.
Thank you, Vikas. So before I invite questions from audience to the, I know people might have a lot of questions to ask, लेकिन थोड़ा संतोष जी के पास मैं थोड़ा और इसके पहले आना चाहता हूँ. ये आपके पास ग्लोबल पर्सपेक्टिव है एंड यू कीप वर्किंग इन मल्टीपल कंट्रीज, तो व्हाट काइंड ऑफ द ग्लोबल नैरेटिव्स आर अराउंड क्लाइमेट एक्शन, क्योंकि ये अभी सबके लिए एक बज़वर्ड जैसा, एवरीबॉडी इज कंसर्न, एवरीबॉडी इज bothered and there are things happening. So what is the global perspective and how we can align ourselves or kind of work to build on the global narratives? तो उसके अराउंड में ग्लोबल नैरेटिव्स क्या है, इंडिया के एफर्ट्स कैसे हैं, इसके अराउंड में अगर आप थोड़ा हमें इनलाइटन कर सकें.
आप लोग न्यूज़ पढ़ते हैं और आप देख रहे हैं कि वर्ल्ड हैज़ कम्प्लीटली चेंज. सुबह सुबह जब हम न्यूज़ पढ़ते हैं तो पता नहीं होता है कल जो बोला गया है उसके आज क्या होगा. सो एक समस्या थी कि क्लाइमेट चेंज एक ग्लोबल प्रॉब्लम थी, बट अब ये सबको पता है कि यार ये प्रॉब्लम तो ग्लोबल थी, सॉल्यूशन अब लोकल होने वाला है. जो हम लोगों का एक डिस्कोर्स था कि ये फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड का कंट्रीब्यूशन है, कॉमन बट डिफरेंशिएटेड रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी, आई थिंक वो डिस्कोर्स कम्प्लीटली अलग हो गया. क्योंकि एक लेवल था कि हम बात कर रहे थे मिटिगेशन को रोकने का, अब हमें ये पता है कि हम बहुत कुछ नहीं कर सकते, हम उस ट्रेन को छोड़ चुके हैं, वी आर आउट. अब समस्या है कि अब हम क्या कर सकते हैं, जो रिस्क उसके हैं. हम ये नहीं कह सकते हैं कि यार आपने बाढ़ आ गई तो आप ये नहीं कह सकते हो कि यार बाढ़ तो अमेरिका के पॉल्यूशन के कारण आई थी, बाढ़ तो हमारे लोग पीड़ित हैं. तो जो लोकल रिस्पॉन्स सिस्टम है वो अब नेशनल गवर्नमेंट की प्रायोरिटी हो गई है. तो एक जो बड़ा शिफ्ट आया है कि मिटिगेशन से हम हट करके अब हम बात करेंगे एडाप्टेशन की. हमको ये चूंकि लोकल प्रॉब्लम है, आज अगर जनता के पास खाने को नहीं है, दैट्स द कंट्रीज प्रॉब्लम, नॉट द ग्लोबल प्रॉब्लम. You can measure all the kind of ppms and what kind of temperature they are doing, but poor countries have different kind of resources, different challenges, they have to face this. एक बहुत क्लैरिटी आ गई है कि क्लाइमेट की जो सॉल्यूशन है वो लोकली आएंगे, इसमें कोई आपको बाहर से सहयोग नहीं होने वाला है. इस चेंज रियलिटी में सभी के, जैसे समीर बता रहे थे कि सबके अलग अलग रोल हैं. किसी के कुछ रोल हैं, किसी का काम है अवेयरनेस क्रिएट करना, किसी का काम है कैपेसिटी बिल्ड करना, किसी का काम है उनको सहायता. वो रोल अब धीरे धीरे इमर्ज होने चालू होंगे क्योंकि प्रायोरिटाइजेशन होगा. एजुकेशन सिस्टम चेंज होनी चाहिए, गवर्नेंस सिस्टम चेंज होनी चाहिए, फिनेंशियल सिस्टम चेंज होनी चाहिए, बिकॉज यू आर नो लॉन्गर बीइंग डिक्टेटेड दैट आई विल कंट्रीब्यूट एंड यू विल डू दिस. नाउ यू हैव टू प्लान योरसेल्फ. बट एक और जो चैलेंज आया है कि हम शुरुआत में क्लाइमेट चेंज को, आई एम काइंड ऑफ एन एक्टिविस्ट इन दैट मोड कि हम क्लाइमेट चेंज को क्लाइमेट चेंज ना करके इससे बेसिकली नया लाइफस्टाइल प्रॉब्लम, हम उसको ऐसा दूर कर देते हैं ना. एक बहुत बड़ा जो स्कैम हुआ उसमें ये था कि क्लाइमेट चेंज को हम लोग वी हैव बिकम द विक्टिम एज वेल एज परपेट्रेटर. जब भी आप क्लाइमेट चेंज की बात करेंगे ना तो आपको लगे अच्छा हम भी तो फ्लाइट लेते हैं, तो आप यहाँ पे कोई दूसरा नहीं है, हम खुद उसके विक्टिम हैं, हम खुद. ये एक बड़ा नैरेटिव है, बट कैपेसिटी अलग अलग है. कहीं ना कहीं बोलना पड़ेगा कि हमको सबको सहयोग करना पड़ेगा. तो वो एक जो है कि लाइफ स्टाइल प्रॉब्लम हो गया है, ये क्लाइमेट चेंज नहीं है, ये एग्रीकल्चर प्रॉब्लम है, ये वाटर सिक्योरिटी प्रॉब्लम है, ट्रांसपोर्टेशन प्रॉब्लम है, हैबिटेशन प्रॉब्लम है. आप क्लाइमेट चेंज मत बोलिए उसको, आपको सोल्व करना पड़ेगा. घर हीट वेव के कारण हमारे पास लोगों के, अभी मैं एक स्टडी देख रहा था कि लगभग जो वेंडर हैं उनकी इनकम 30 से 40% कम हो जाती है बिकॉज ऑफ हीट वेव, क्योंकि वो साल में 30-40 दिन वो दुकान नहीं लगा सकते, जो स्ट्रीट हॉकर हैं वो, क्योंकि कोई आता नहीं है. अब आप इसको क्लाइमेट चेंज प्रॉब्लम बोलिए या लाइवलीहुड प्रॉब्लम बोलिए, ये आप पे निर्भर करता है. सो द ग्लोबल डिस्कोर्स, द लाइन इज वेरी क्लियर कि इट इज नाउ अ लोकल रिस्पॉन्स play and not the global direction that where the planet will go, because the resources are different. द वन थिंग दैट आई सी, जो क्लाइमेट फाइनेंस का जो एंगल है, मैं एक बात बताना चाहता हूँ कि क्लाइमेट फाइनेंस पे भारत सरकार और हम लोग कॉप पे भी बात कर रहे थे, उस पे ना दो चीज़ें थोड़ी सी समझनी पड़ेगी हमें कि क्लाइमेट फाइनेंस का जो गेम है वो चेंज हो चुका है। क्लाइमेट फाइनेंस का मतलब था कि जो लोग पोल्यूट कर रहे हैं वो पे करें, दैट वाज क्लाइमेट फाइनेंस। बट जब आप सोलर में इन्वेस्ट करते हो 17% रिटर्न के लिए, दैट इज फाइनेंसिंग क्लाइमेट, इट्स अ कंप्लीटली डिफरेंट थिंग। तो आप जो क्लाइमेट फाइनेंस है, दैट मीन्स द काइंड ऑफ पेमेंट फॉर द problem that you have created, not that investing into 18% opportunity and saying I have contributed to that. The world is moving towards financing climate and not towards climate finance. तो इंडिया को जो भी अभी पैसे मिल रहे हैं, दे आर नॉट क्लाइमेट फाइनेंस, इट मोस्टली फाइनेंसिंग क्लाइमेट। अपॉर्चुनिटी है, सोलर लगाना है हम पैसे दे देंगे आपको, सॉयल कार्बन इन्हांस करना है कोई पैसे नहीं देने वाला। सो सॉयल कार्बन इन्हांस करने के लिए आप कहाँ से लाएंगे? या तो फिलंथ्रोपी रिप्रायोरिटाइज करें कि हम इसमें करेंगे, या सरकार बोले कि हम करें। तो ग्लोबल विंड इज क्लियर, India and global south have to find its own solution, because we have the largest number of people, least number of resources, and the most vulnerable kind of ecosystem. So that's the global discourse. बहुत optimistic नहीं है, but ये clear है कि हमारा जो भविष्य है हमारे हाथ में अभी है। We can't basically rely on somebody else to come and do that. ब्राज़ील में COP होने वाला है, मुझे नहीं पता है कि वहाँ पे क्या निकल के आएगा, क्योंकि ये वो फाइट होने वाली है। वो बोलेंगे आप ये गोल अचीव करिए, हम बोलेंगे कि आप इसके लिए पैसे दीजिए। इट्स अ स्टैंड आउट देयर। सो ग्लोबल डिस्कोर्स इज मोर अबाउट लोकली लेड ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन, कम्युनिटी लेड ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन, कम्युनिटी रेजिलियंस, कम्युनिटीज पार्टिसिपेशन। वी कैनॉट लुक एट द ग्लोबल money to come and save this.
I think just adding to that, is it similar to rural urban also? नहीं,
क्लाइमेट चेंज डज नॉट डिफरेंशिएट कि रूरल क्या है, अर्बन क्या है।
पर्सपेक्टिव का है कि जैसे ये समझ है कि नहीं, ये शहर वालों ने ये प्रॉब्लम क्रिएट किया है, गांव में तो हम बहुत ठीक ठाक से रहते हैं, और हमारी समस्या का समाधान कौन करेगा?
आप देखिए, शहर जो है वो गांव के बिना नहीं रह सकते हैं, गांव बिना शहर के रह सकते हैं बहुत हद तक। यू आर स्टिल, योर लॉट ऑफ फूड सिस्टम, एवरीथिंग इज डिपेंडेंट ऑन विलेजेस। यू आर स्टिल डिपेंडेंट ऑन विलेजेस। आप भले बोलते हो कि हम यहाँ पे ऑर्गेनिक ले रहे हैं, वो आता वहाँ से है। सो दिस इज नॉट अ काइंड ऑफ डुअल सिस्टम कि अर्बन सिस्टम्स आर सेपरेट, एंड दैट्स वेयर द अंडरस्टैंडिंग द होल इकोलॉजी, दैट हाउ दे आर कनेक्टेड, राइट? So I think solutions need to happen at both level. You have to change the system. If you are saying that a person is migrating, the solution lies in building opportunity in the village. आप उसको अर्बन से प्रॉब्लम कर सकते हैं। सो व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू हाईलाइट इज दैट कि इन द पर्सपेक्टिव ऑफ डेवलपमेंट there are different approaches, but I don't see a big difference between okay, this is a rural angle, this is the urban angle. They're very interconnected. It's a very interconnected. Villagers are dependent on kind of markets for their many things. Urban systems are dependent on villages for supplying many things. So unfortunately, the decentralized development models have not become that kind of predominant in India. We still kind of grid connected. So I won't go there because it's different. But for climate change, urban, rural does not matter. It equally hits. In fact, since you use the word urban, I'm not sure how many urban planners are here. Look at the urban flood. Do you know that our urban planners have never studied the watershed of urban cities? The urban planning was done without understanding the watershed of the urban cities, and we have blocked all the pathways. Can you see that? Because this is a pure lack of thinking. And हम हमेशा फ्लड देख रहे हैं, चेन्नई में फ्लड आ रहा है, एवरीवेयर, राइट? अगर वो हम रेस्पेक्ट करते उस वाटर सेड को कि पानी ऐसे गिरेगा तो यहाँ बहेगा, उसको ब्लॉक नहीं करना है, you could have done that. So urban rural divide is critical for us to do the planning because their needs might be different, there are different interventions, but they are very connected.
थैंक यू संतोष। यू वांट टू ऐड समथिंग?
हाँ, ये क्वेश्चन से एक्चुअली मैं थोड़ा भावुक हो जाता हूँ, ठीक है? बिकॉज ये एक्चुअली हम जब व्हेन वी ट्रैवल टू द विलेजेस वी हैव दिस डिबेट कि ये किसकी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, क्या है, या जिसकी भी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, जगह अपनी है, ठीक है? और अगर 6.5 लाख गाँव है, अभी आज आप किसी भी 20 ईयर ओल्ड से पूछिए तो घुमा फिरा के वही 5 शहर हैं जहाँ लोग जाते हैं, या जाना चाहते हैं. अगर किसी वजह से नहीं पहुंच पाए फिर भी कोशिश तो वही रहती है. हम एक में बैठे हैं, मैं बैंगलोर से आया हूँ, बॉम्बे है, पुणे है, हैदराबाद है, वही 5 है. 75 साल 80 साल के बाद हमने यही 6 शहर बनाए. थोड़े शर्म की बात है, देखिए 6.5 लाख गांव हैं. लेकिन गांव से भी क्वेश्चन है कि तुम्हारे गांव से लोग भाग क्यों गए. तुम्हें एज अ विलेज अपनी जगह पे विश्वास क्यों नहीं है. तुम्हारा बिस्किट बाहर से आ रहा है, तुम्हारी झाड़ू बाहर से आ रही है, तुम्हारी सब्जी बाहर से आ रही है, तुम्हारा तेल बाहर से आ रहा है, तुम्हारी चप्पल बाहर से आ रही है. यू कैन गो ऑन. 85-90% of your own consumption basket in most villages comes from a town somewhere, including their vegetables. And we have seen this in Kutch, we have seen this in Uttarakhand, in Karnataka, in Tamil Nadu, in deep tribal Odisha. Meghalaya is one small exception where I found some hope. Otherwise, this is true across the country. Right? Nobody has faith in their land anymore. 6.5 लाख गांव अगर जॉब मांगेंगे, अगर 3 लाख जॉब गांव जॉब प्रोड्यूस नहीं करेंगे तो बाकी 3 लाख को जॉब देगा कौन. अगर तुमको अपनी बायोलॉजी पे विश्वास नहीं है तो किसी और की माइनिंग पे विश्वास है, फिर तो वहीं से आएगा आंसर. राइट. तो ये बहुत, like I said, like if the village has to sit together, it has to contend with these questions also. It is not like the community is by default doing a great job of being custodians of the place. Cities में तो almost hope ही नहीं है. Right? It's a massive rebuilding effort from understanding the geography you're living in. But even in the village, it's broken down quite a lot. There is still pockets of knowledge, there is still an understanding of place, there is still hope. And that's what we have to build on, really. I mean, Meghalaya was very, 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 very hopeful when I visited recently. But there are many pockets of hope like that. But I don't think we can pass on responsibility. I mean, for 10,000, 12,000 years, we've done that. But I think we've got to stop now.
Yeah, thank you. So now we'll come to the audience. If there are some questions somebody needs to ask.
This is Arvind Tripathi. I am, as some of us have said, I am very new to this sector and I am quite liking this conversation. I was, in a way, preparing to be a sincere participant before I came here. And which is where my question is, when I listen to this wonderful conversation which is happening on the dais, there's a question that is kind of, boiling up in my mind, and that is, are we seeing an age where it is economy versus ecology? Are we seeing an age जहाँ पे किसी और के consumerism के वजह से somebody else is paying a price? Are we really at a trade-off? Not only probably some of those conventional trade-offs, but literally it's Arvind versus somebody else in this room also, probably. Samir, right? You talked about hope, and probably you were talking about some other villages and sustainable. Well, economy मैं बोलूँ कि नहीं बोलूँ, I really want to abstain from using that word, but sustainable place, as you have been talking about, what could be, well, again, idealistic is too very idealistic to say, but what could be a model which probably will inspire us कि ये वो model है which is something to replicate. Again, there will be adaptations, there will be customizations, because every place is a different place, but does this panel or any one of us have an idea of what that could be? It's more of a provocation again from my side, but I would love to listen to your views. Thank you for allowing me to ask you this question.
The dais has unanimously decided that all tough questions shall be answered by Samir. But let me answer with a small counter question. And for those who are old enough, otherwise just adjust it to your first memory. How many toilets, or therefore toilet flushes, does your flat or apartment have now? And how many toilets or flushes existed 20 years, 25 years ago, whoever is appropriately old, existed in those households then? Just think about it, that itself will tell you, will give you an answer. And every time 6 liters of flush water goes down, even if a child has just peed a few drops, you certainly will get one sense of where it goes. And always fresh water, almost always fresh water. Even the types of toilet systems have changed. They were earlier mostly what we used to call the Indian style, and maybe it was just a mug of water, etc. So different things have happened. Point 2, how many of us in this room are feeling a little cold? हाथ उठाएं. So not for nothing do I wear a jacket. और आप लोग बोल रहे हैं कि global warming हो रहा है, तो हम तो यहाँ पर और ठंडा कर देंगे एक. But obviously there is heat being expelled outside. So is economics impacting your ability to deal with the issue and concern? Of course it is. So if you are richer, you can buy your way out of problem. How many of us remember the story of the city of Bangalore just about one summer ago, before last year's good monsoons? Did you remember TV being full of Bangalore mein pani nahi hai? Then what happened to that discussion? One good monsoon, everyone forgot. Now there's a surplus water. But where was Bangalore getting a lot of that water from? Obviously, there's water being diverted. Somebody else's water, which would have gone to somebody's fields, is coming to flush your toilets in those in the lovely apartments that you have, unless you are sinking a boring of 2,000 feet down to get it. So finally, I mean, I don't think any of us have a solution, but they're just perspectives to reflect that finally they are all a cause of our own. We are as much a problem as a victim, as you very rightly said. माने perpetrator भी तो हम ही हैं, और कौन है? माने it's not just the US and the developed world. We have also had a role to play.
Can I go ahead? I also want to add to that.
But it's interesting now. I'm playing the optimistic guy for a change, right? The nice thing in India is there are dozens and dozens and dozens of examples that you can learn from. Not everything is complete, not everything is holistically well-rounded. But I mentioned Meghalaya, the community ownership of land is, the shared stories around it still persist. Bodoland has homesteads, the commons have broken down. Odisha has a lot of, now with the FRA especially, the rebuilding of the community's own relationship with the forest is happening. You're finding examples. You're finding there's some 200 farmers in Bihar who have declared independence. Right? There's another community in Vidarbha which has decided on a bunch of norms around their water management, their soil management, their production, what they will buy and not buy. You find a lot of these examples to learn from, right? The Bangalore example, for 119 lakes, we had 120 lake groups, right? Citizens were trying to, get the principle of subsidiarity, the 74th Amendment, to be a lived reality on the ground. So there are many pockets of inspiration, hope. How they add up quickly enough, as we keep hearing more news every morning in the paper, that's the race right now, right? And can we, the thing about the very large economic engine versus the, it sometimes does feel like we are throwing crumpled paper balls at a freight train coming your way, right? But maybe if enough of us throw it simultaneously, we'll at least slow it down a little bit. So, yeah.
So I just want to hit your question on the sustainable economy. There is something called carrying capacity of Earth, right? So we have already crossed that carrying capacity. So Earth, and we all expect the economy to grow by 7%, 8% every year. Earth is not growing by that. So if we have this growth ambition, Earth is not growing. So either you have to change the way you consume things, or change the way you produce things, or change the way you live, or whatever, because there are some finite constraints on the system where we have infinite ambitions. So sustainable economy, is kind of, for me, slightly a pessimistic thing, unless and until a few people decide, a large number of people decide that we are happy the way we want to live and we don't have growth ambition. Otherwise, Earth is not going to be kind of expanding its resource base so that we can meet everybody's ambitions.
We'll take, in interest of time, we'll take just one question. Only one.
हेलो, सॉरी, मैं पंकज हूँ। मेरा क्वेश्चन, अभी आप लोगों ने पैनल ने कहा कि इस प्रॉब्लम का जो सॉल्यूशन है वो लोकल लेवल पे है। तो मैं ये समझना चाहता हूँ, बैठे बैठे मेरे मन में क्वेरी आई, क्या लोकल गवर्नमेंट लाइक पंचायत का कोई रोल हो सकता है इस प्रॉब्लम को मीट आउट करने में? क्योंकि मुझे लगा, भी सोचा कि पीपीपी एक मॉडल हो सकता है क्या, पंचायत पब्लिक प्राइवेट पार्टनरशिप, क्योंकि गवर्नमेंट का एक बड़ा इन्वेस्टमेंट है प्लांटेशन पे, प्राइवेट पार्टनर भी उस प्लांटेशन पे पैसा लगा रहा है, और रूरल कम्युनिटी में मोर देन 10 करोड़ वुमेन जो है वो एसएचजी मूवमेंट से जुड़ी हुई है। उससे मोस्टली वुमेन ऐसी है जिनके पास लैंड होल्डिंग साइज बहुत छोटा है। तो जो गवर्नमेंट लैंड जो पड़ी हुई है बहुत सारे एरिया में, उसको यूज़ करते हो, क्या इस मॉडल को जनरेट कर सकते हैं, पॉलिसी में इस तरह कुछ ला सकते हो, प्राइवेट पार्टनर उस लेवल पे इन्वेस्टमेंट कर सकते हैं, क्या कोई अपॉर्चुनिटी है क्या? प्लीज़।
सर, है, ऐसी अपॉर्चुनिटी है, थोड़ा सा अर्ली स्टेज में है। बहुत सारी जगह पे ऐसे काम हो रहे हैं जहाँ पे हम चीज़ों को एग्रीगेट करके प्राइवेट सेक्टर के साथ काम हो रहा है, बट अभी ये बहुत ही अर्ली स्टेज में है, मेन स्ट्रीम नहीं हुआ है, बहुत सारी जानकारी नहीं है, गवर्नमेंट के सिस्टम भी धीरे धीरे अपने आप को इम्प्रूव कर रहे हैं, बट पॉसिबिलिटी श्योरली है। एंड एक और चीज़ जो मैं बोलना चाहता हूँ कि क्लाइमेट एक्शन के लिए जो चीज़ें हम बोल रहे हैं उस पर वी हैव अ नंबर ऑफ ऑप्शन दैट वी नीड टू डील, एंड ऑल ऑप्शंस नीड टू बी ऑन द टेबल। हमारे पास ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं है कि हम बोल सकते हैं ये करेंगे ये नहीं करेंगे, क्योंकि समस्या इतनी बड़ी है कि वी हैव टू हैव एवरीथिंग ऑन द टेबल। तो क्लाइमेट में जैसे सब कुछ समस्या है, उसी तरह से सबका एक रोल है उस सॉल्यूशन को लाने में, यानी यहाँ पे कुछ भी टेबल से आउट नहीं है। अगर हमें कंजम्पशन कम करना चाहिए, सही है, हमें सरकार को अलग ढंग से चलाना चाहिए, सही है। सो पब्लिक प्राइवेट partnership or any other kind of frameworks, they are all part of the solution. अलग अलग मेच्योरिटी लेवल पे हैं, अलग अलग अंडरस्टैंडिंग है, कैपेबिलिटी अलग है, बट ये हो रहा है। एंड अशोक जी भी बताएंगे, बहुत सारे पे ऐसे हम लोगों ने झारखंड में किया था कि कैसे हम छोटे किसानों को जोड़ सकें, उनके बहुत सारी समस्याएं थी, उनको हमने दूर की, थोड़ा टाइम लगा, बट ऐसे मॉडल आ रहे हैं। यू कैन टॉक टू TRIF टीम एंड दे वुड बी एबल टू गाइड यू ऑन अ फ्यू थिंग्स।
Thanks. Sorry, I think we can talk over the lunch also. At that time, I think we are all together, so हम उस समय का इस्तेमाल करेंगे, otherwise next session will be getting delayed. So thank you everybody, and I think it was fantastic to learn many things. We learnt about हमने सिर्फ vulnerability की बात नहीं की है, हमने leadership की बात की है, हमने place की बात की है, custodianship की बात की है, एग्जाम्पल्स की बात की है, ग्लोबल नैरेटिव की बात की है। तो आई थिंक आई लर्नड अ लॉट इन दिस होल प्रोसेस, एंड आई थैंक एवरीबडी फॉर देयर कंट्रीब्यूशन एंड कमिंग टू दिस प्लेस एंड spend time with us. So as a token of appreciation, we would like to share a small gift for you. So Vatsala ma'am, please.